that you might enjoy to use if you have them around the house. Some sort of strappy thing, either a TheraBand, a tie, a belt, something like that's nice. If you've got a yoga block or a book or something like that, feel free to grab that. And then the one fun thing, oh, hi, Obi. My dog decided to join. Let you go, come on. She's a little too excited. If you happen to have, I know some of you join me for Unwind. If you happen to have a Corgeous ball, which is just kind of a big inflatable ball, feel free to grab it. Totally not necessary. I'm going to tell you why we might use it right now. And if you happen to have a straw, grab one. Maybe you have like a fancy aluminum straw or like a bamboo straw. And if you don't have it, not a big deal. The first thing that we're going to do today, after we kind of just like tune in, is we're going to do a breathing technique that's kind of like it's like a straw breath, and it's kind of cool if you have a ball or like a balloon type of technique to use for it, but none of these things are necessary. I'll walk you through it if you have the fun tools, and I'll walk you through it if you're just mimicking them as well. So that's the rundown. Let's get this show on the road. And again, I'll kind of give you a little reminder if we are using a tool throughout class, so that if you're just joining us, you can jump on it. But we're gonna start lying on our backs. We'll just kind of tune into our breath. So what we call Ardha Shavasana, or half corpse pose if you're a yogi. Have your straw situation nearby. And if you do have a book or a block, grab that. Now you're gonna use that to prop your hips up. So take that block or book or whatever you've got under your hips. Your knees are gonna stay bent so that the soles of your feet are really grounded and rooted into the ground. And you can just take your arms alongside your body for here. And for these first few moments, just tune into your breath. And noticing what it feels like to breathe in your body. I like to call this your native breath or your natural breath. So maybe you just start to notice what that feels like right now. It might feel different from tomorrow. Maybe it's different than it was earlier today. Just come notice it. Maybe your eyelids are closed, but take these first few moments of connecting with your breath to get really rooted to the parts of your body that are connected to the ground. Let your feet feel really stable, and maybe the backs of your arms lie heavy. The back of your shoulders and your skull get really rooted and grounded into the earth beneath you. And this sensation of having your hips propped up starts to turn on your parasympathetic nervous system. It starts to send those signals to the body to relax and to calm down. Take 3 breaths in this shape. It doesn't matter how they move or when they move, just breathe. Cool. You're gonna stay exactly as you are. I'm gonna walk you through what we call a straw breath, and I'll walk you through it without any props, and then if you happen to have some fancy props, I'll give you that option too. So we're just gonna imagine that we have a straw in between our lips, or that you are blowing up a balloon and your lips are kind of pursed in that fashion. And I just want you to take a really big, expansive inhale. Feel it get really broad into the belly and the chest and the lungs. And then on your exhale, in that sensation of blowing up a balloon or blowing through pursed lips, start to exhale and make that exhale really small and concise as you blow up a balloon as much as you possibly can. And then when you run out of air, continue to take another inhale breath. And then keep blowing up that imaginary balloon.
And you'll continue this breath pattern, big broad breath, allow the belly center to get really supple. And then that sensation of blowing up the balloon allows your exhale to become longer than your inhale. It creates this streamline of breath. Now continue to breathe like this. If you've got a straw, that'll give you a little bit more feedback because you can actually place that in between your lips and your exhale breath breathes into the straw. And if you happen to have a Corgeous ball, that just gives you a little tactile sensation, so you actually have something to blow into instead of an imaginary balloon. Couple more breaths here. Your inhale is broad as you inflate into the body. Your exhale becomes longer as you blow up this balloon, longer and bigger than you ever have before. Let's take 3 more breaths here, friends. So this sensation of not only allowing your exhales to become longer than your inhales, but especially kind of using the sensation of a balloon or of a straw or an imaginary straw kind of sends those same signals to the nervous system and allows you to calm and allows you to feel really grounded and rooted just by breathing. One last breath here, friends. And exhale into that imaginary straw or balloon. And let it go. If you have accessories, place them off to the side. If it feels okay, keep those hips on top of that block. And allow your breath to regulate, so let it just come back to that regular old breath. And we've been kind of starting class with this move pretty often. So when you're ready, your right leg is going to go long so it extends on the ground and the heel is really heavy into the ground. And you'll use your hands to bring the left knee in towards the chest, and it might just be a really subtle pull as you compress the hands onto the left shin. Right, so you've kind of brought the left knee in towards the chest. It's not super tight, but it is a little elevated. And you're sending lots of breath to that long leg, your right leg. I like to flex the foot and see if I can dig my heel down into the ground as I'm imagining I'm pushing the heel out and away from me, as if I was trying to stretch the mat away. So you get a really big release in your hip. Take one more big inhale breath here. And then let it go and just switch legs. So left leg goes long, right knee comes in towards the chest. Give yourself a moment to really set yourself up. So think long leg focus first. That long leg heel, that left heel is rooted into the ground. That leg is reaching towards the wall away from you. So not only are you turning on your thigh and lengthening it down towards your hamstrings, but you're trying to kind of stretch and rip that mat away from you. And then your hands come onto the right knee and there's just a little subtle compression here. Take 2 big breaths. You're trying to find really heaviness in your shoulders and your head, right? So they're really heavy still. Cool. And then let it go. Bend both knees, place them on the ground, ditch your block. And make sure you have a little room around you. So if you did end up grabbing a Corgeous ball or like a straw or anything, make sure that stuff is just kind of off to the side. And then from here, if you're kind of a yogi, you're probably likely familiar with a pose that's called Happy Baby. And we're going into a version of this that's called Half Happy Baby. And we might have done this a couple weeks ago. Can't remember what day it is anymore. But when you're ready, we're going to start with just your full Happy Baby. So you're going to bend both knees and both hips. And I like to take my hands inside my knees to the insides of my ankles. And this is kind of like your upside down squat, right? Because my feet are flexed as if they were trying to reach up towards the ceiling. I'm using my elbows and my arms, the inside of my legs, to kind of splay them out. So ideally, your knees are directly under your ankles, just like if you were in a squat, right? We'd ask for that alignment of your knees floating over your ankles. Take a moment here. I'm going to pivot to face you because I think it's going to be a little easier once we start moving this, if you guys can see what's going on here. But I'm in that happy baby. I'm still asking for that same release from my head, neck, and shoulders. Now, this is not the best view, but it's okay. Right, your feet are flexed, and if you need to take your hands lower onto your shins so that you can keep your head low, please do. And just take a couple rocks from side to side. You're in your upside down squat. Your arms are on the inside of your knees, and they're asking for a little bit more opening, right? My knees are going outwards, so they're wider than my hips. They're wider than my armpits. And you take a couple rocks. Cool. And then find your way back to center, and your left leg is going to plant on the ground. So your left foot is on the ground, your left knee is pointing up towards the ceiling, but I've still got a hold of my right leg, so I'm in a half happy baby now. My foot is trying to reach up towards the ceiling. My arm, my outer arm is kind of like glued or Velcro to the inside of my thigh. And this is a really slow motion variation of this today. And I want you to use your arm really to open that leg out towards the side. And your opposite hip might start to come up a little bit, and that's totally okay. But find this slow load, right? My arm is working immensely to open and find more external rotation as my hip opens, right? So your knee is opening because your hip flexor, your hip crease is opening and broadening as you're trying to keep your ankle in alignment with your knee. And then just take a couple sways. So you're rocking onto your opposite hip, you're rocking onto your left hip, and then you're rocking onto the right knee. So your hip is now kind of like a boat or like a seesaw, right? My hips, I rock onto my right hip, and then my right thigh, my right knee tap the ground. So my left hip is lifted up to make that happen. And then I just reset. Couple rocks here. Right, your arm might be feeling a little fatigued. Feel free to lower it down. It doesn't have to be so high. Cool. And then the next time that right knee taps down towards the ground and your left hip is lifted up a little bit to make that happen, pause here. And then from this position, all I want you to do, your right leg, right, so the arm that you're gripping, you're going to straighten that leg so that the pinky toe taps the ground. And then you're just going to bend it again. Leg straightens and bends. Stay where you at. I'm going to pivot back so you can see a different angle from this. So left leg is as it is. That half happy baby leg is just straightening so the toes tap the ground and bending. Straightens and bends. And it's slow. It straightens and it bends. So feel that traction of your hamstring. And for me, a lot of it is in my hip flexor right now, asking for that movement. And they're slow. Do 3, friends. Do 2. My left hip is elevated a lot. Cool. Listen to this. This is my favorite part. The next time that knee bends, pause here. You're going to start to rock onto your left hip so that your right leg, right, your half happy baby leg, crosses over your body. And then if it's available to you, that right big toe taps the ground on the left side of your body. So you've crossed the body. Let's do a couple slow together. So come back to your original positioning, your half happy baby position. Bend into your right thigh a lot so the right knee taps the ground. Straighten your half happy baby leg so the pinky toe taps the ground. Bend the knee. Cross the leg over the body. And then maybe they start to become a little more rapid, right? Can you feel that you're moving your hips in a lot of different directions? So this is super nice. A lot of times I teach this kind of more rapidly, but since we slowed it down at the beginning, I think it's kind of a nice way to prep your hips and get into your glutes. I know a lot of you were telling me that you wanted glute stuff today. Let's do 3. And of course you could slow it down if there's kind of little sticky areas in between. Maybe you kind of pause there. Last one. And cross that leg over. Come back to your full happy baby when you're ready. So both legs reach up towards the ceiling. Your legs, or your hands rather, are to the inside of your legs, and just take a couple rocks. We'll eventually make that same movement patterning happen in the left leg. So when you're ready, right leg plants down. So we're just gonna use it for stability, right? It's kind of just coming along for the ride. And then I'm sending a lot of energy into my left arm. So I'm in the very basic part of this, just asking that hip to open by sending energy and effort from my arm into my inner knee. I'm asking for that opening while still trying really hard to reach that foot up towards the ceiling in this upside down squat. Oh, yeah, intense. And then take 2 more big breaths, send that energy into the arm, send that energy into the inner knee. And then just start to take a couple rocks. Right, what happens if I lift my right hip up and just try to rock my thigh down towards the ground? Couple rocks here. Your half happy baby. Your little mini vinyasa, we could say, but we're doing it really slow today. Rocking. So my right hip lifts up to make this happen, and my thigh taps the ground. Cool. If you're ready to move on, when you're, the next time that your left thigh taps the ground, pause. You're gonna straighten that leg so the pinky toe tries to tap the ground on the left side of your body, and you just bend the knee again. So my right hip, my opposite hip, stays elevated the whole time, and it's this bend and extend. And if it feels good for you, it's kind of a nice secure position to have your left thigh heavy on the ground so that you gotta lift up through your opposite leg a lot. And it's just a bend and extend. Traction, flossing of your hamstring, flossing of your fascia. Cool. Let's do one more. Okay. The next time that knee bends, you're coming back to your half happy baby, your original positioning, right? You're in your half squat, and then you're gonna cross over your body. So now the left leg crosses towards the right, and maybe the big toe taps the ground. You reset, and then you put it all together. You lean towards the left, left pinky toe taps the ground, come back to your half happy baby, cross that leg over your body, and do a couple more, right? They can be rapid, they can be slow, you decide, but feel your hip moving in lots of different directions, this massage of not only your hips today, but for me, a lot of it's my hamstring, right? That bending and extending is super intense. Let's go for 4. How about 2, friends? How does it feel? Okay, last one. And then meet me back lying on your backs, and this time just bring your knees in towards your chest. And just take a couple kind of sways from side to side. Okay. And then your arms are gonna reach out into a T, or a goalpost if you've got stuff in the way like I do. And then your legs are in a tabletop position. We're gonna move into just a really subtle spinal twist from here. So your inner thighs are together. And then when you're ready, you're gonna let your knees drip over towards your right. They're gonna make their way down towards the ground. And I want you to pause once you get there and make any variations that you need to, right? So if it doesn't feel good in your body to bring your knees all the way down towards the ground, maybe you place a block or a blanket or something under your knees. Same thing if you can't bring your legs together, right? So feel free to make those options. We'll take a couple breaths in this first shape. And once you've kind of maneuvered and adjusted as necessary, I just want you to take some of your attention to your left shoulder, so your opposite shoulder today. If it's elevated up off the ground, not a big deal. But can you just see where your breath is moving in this shape? Maybe you're able to send some breath into that chest, into that shoulder. And maybe you can send some of your breath to the opposite hip. I kind of like to imagine that my top hip is lengthening away from my waistline, so I get lots of space in that nice lateral line of my body, right? And then I feel this sensation of release in my low back, right? Twists are fantastic. You've got tension in your low back. Take one more breath. And then think of like a lazy sloth, or like you just trying to get up out of bed. It's with a little amount of effort. Bring your legs back to center. Oh. And then let them drip over towards the left. And take a couple moments to set your setup up on that side, right? Because you're human. This side might have way different stuff going on. And once you've got set up, just bring some of your attention to your right chest, right? Your right pectoral muscle, your right armpit. Just notice what's going on. How might you adjust yourself? Sometimes I feel like if I press the back of my hand into the ground a lot, I get a little more traction. Maybe for you, if you press your palm into the ground, you can gain a little more traction. Just play with it. And then start to send some of your breath to this kind of twisting of the middle of the body, and feel that whole line of your chest to your top hip open. And maybe that top hip is able to lengthen away from the waistline. Take one more big breath. And then really slowly start to bring your legs back to center. And then listen to this. We're gonna rock on over to the right as if you're coming into a fetal position. And then I'll meet you in a tabletop when you get there. So nice tabletop positioning. Hands and knees. Your wrists are under your shoulders, your knees are under your hips, and you're looking for this nice neutral spine. And we're moving just through some really slow cat-cows today. So I almost like hesitate to call them cat-cows because that's how slow I want them to be. So inhale, feel your belly button start to droop or drip down as your tailbone starts to float up. And then you feel this sensation of broadening in the front of your chest as you pull your heart and your chest through your arms and reach them forward in your inhale breath. And then as you exhale, it's slow, right? So engage the abdominals first, feel the belly button, slowly start to lift up. The tailbone follows, the upper back starts to expand, and then the neck, and then the head. Inhale, slow undulation, one piece of the spine, and then another, and then another. And then exhale, round the belly up, slow undulation, flexion of your spine. Couple more here, right? I like to kind of use my arms as a little bit of feedback. So not only are my hands just planted there to support me, but I'm lifting up and out of them. And that support system, right, that grounding of your hands and your knees should allow your spine possibly to move a little more freely. Okay. Find your way in a nice neutral spine. So somewhere in between, your belly button is engaged just to feel supported. We're gonna move into a thread the needles. We'll open up the upper back. If you're familiar with this, feel free to go for it with your left arm. If not, I'll walk you through it. So your left arm is gonna sweep out towards the side of the room and reach up towards the ceiling. Your gaze follows, so now you've opened up your chest and reached your arm up towards the ceiling, ideally in alignment with the shoulder. And then as if you were threading a needle, you're gonna thread and sweep that left arm under the right. You're lowering onto the left shoulder and maybe the left ear, and you pause here. That arm is on the ground. And you can take as many variations if you'd like, because we'll spend a couple moments here. So if you want to creep your right arm forward towards the top of the mat, that might feel nice. I know some people like to elongate their legs, but take a couple breaths here.
I know another shout out for you guys was your upper back kind of feeling like that was really tight. This is kind of a nice way to open it. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about some other options at the end of class too, if you're looking for more upper back stuff. Take one more big breath, friends. And then slowly start to unweave yourself out of it. Reach that arm back up towards the ceiling. Feel that extension and then openness in your chest. And then plant that hand on the ground. Reset your alignment if you need to. And then the right arm sweeps out towards the side. Really reach that arm. Get really broad through the front of your chest and the breastbone muscles. And then that arm sweeps and dives under your left. You lower onto your right ear. You take a moment, you have some grace because you're human and one side's probably different than the other. And take a couple breaths here. As you do that, I'm just gonna take a quick sip of water. But take a couple moments, right? And if it doesn't feel comfortable, the best thing about being a human with free will is you don't have to do anything that you don't want. And if you know that there's another variation that you love that maybe you've learned for another teacher, feel free to do that too. That's especially what I love about these guided workouts at home, right? Is that you have a little more time and freedom to do stuff that maybe just kind of feels good in your body. We'll take one more breath here, friends. Okay, when you're ready, unweave your right arm. Reach it back up towards the ceiling. And then you're gonna plant that hand on the ground. So you're back in your hands and knees positioning. And then we're gonna move a little flowy today to start. So remember that slow motion cat-cow I talked about earlier? We're gonna revisit that. Take an inhale as the belly lowers. Feel this traction as the armpits drag back and the breastbones extend and pull forward through the arms. That's your inhale breath. Exhale, slow motion rounding of your spine. And then shift your hips back to a child's pose. Just take a moment here. And then tuck your toes, take your hips up and back to a downward facing dog. Take 3 breaths, and we're just gonna move through those really slow kind of waves of movement today as a way to connect your movement to your spine and to your breath and to the front and the back of your body. So your next inhale breath drops you back onto your hands and your knees. Belly lowers, chest expands forward, tailbone lifts. Exhale, round your spine a lot or flex it. Shift your hips back to a child's pose. Send a lot of energy into your arms. Tuck your toes, take your hips up and back. 3 breaths in that downward facing dog and make variations, right? If it doesn't feel good, bend your knees a lot. If it doesn't feel good, spread your feet out wide. You always get to advocate for yourself. Your next inhale breath takes you back onto your hands and knees. Belly lowers, chest rises. Exhale, round your spine. Inhale, child's pose. Exhale, tuck your toes, downward facing dog. Right? Maybe on this downward facing dog, you pedal your feet out. You starfish your fingertips a little more. You do something different because this doesn't feel good in your body, right? You choose. Last one here, friends. Your inhale breath tips you forward. You find that tabletop positioning. Belly button drops. Chest opens out of the arms. Exhale, round your spine. Inhale, child's pose. Exhale, tuck your toes, downward facing dog. You're gonna float your right leg back, so a 3-legged dog we call this. You're reaching your right leg back and away from you. Take 1 big breath as you get really rooted into your arms. Bend your floating knee, so bend your right knee and walk it between your hands. I'll meet you there. You're gonna drop your back knee down onto the ground. I'll pivot to face you so you can see what's going on once we get there. Cool. So you're in this nice low lunge, your back knee is rooted on the ground. I want you to walk your front knee, so your right knee, to the outside of your arms. So lizard pose. So your right knee's to the outside of your right arm. If it doesn't feel good for you to take your hands onto the ground, please bring the ground up to your hands. So grab a book, grab something. I've been blessed with very long arms, which means that a lot of these shapes might just feel like they're a little more obtainable to my body, but that doesn't mean that it's the way it needs to look. So you can always elevate the ground if it doesn't feel good to bring your hands down to the ground. So your arms are to the inside of that leg, and just like we were doing in that happy baby, I want you to glue your right tricep or your right outer arm to the inside of your knee so you have a little bit of feedback. So yes, it feels good, but you get a little bit of feedback and traction here. And then take an inhale breath, start to straighten your front leg, shift your hips back, lift your toes, so half split. And then exhale, hold on to that sensation of traction as you bend the knee, the inner leg stays glued to your arm. Inhale, extend. Exhale, bend. And you might feel that same sort of fascia flossing, that hamstring engagement that maybe you felt in that happy baby. Because sometimes when we slow it down, when we ask those muscles to engage, you get a little bit more of a stretch because it's more active. So it's less about hanging out in your joints and more about those muscles turning on just enough to then release. Last one here, friends. Inhale, straighten that leg. Okay, stay here. See if you can allow that front thigh really to lengthen and melt down towards your hamstring. Maybe you can lift those toes up towards your face a lot. And come onto the pads of your fingertips. So see if you can find a little lift in the front of your chest. So imagine that your heart or your sternum is just trying to lift up forward, so you get a little extension in your spine. Front thigh engages a lot to lengthen down, and my hip tries to lengthen away from my waistline, just like we did when we were twisting. Take one more big breath here. Cool. Bend a lot into that front knee. We're gonna move into kind of a pigeon variation, so a lot of yoga today. If you know where we're going, feel free to set it up. It's gonna be a little different. If not, you're just gonna walk your right foot towards your left arm, and then you're bending a lot into that hip so that you can lower your hip down to the ground. So I think you guys should be able to see me from here, and a lot of you are probably familiar with this shape. So my right knee is right to the inside of my right hand, and my right foot is pointing away from me. It's gonna create this shelf, right? You can think of your shin being kind of perpendicular to your mat. Cool. I want you to tuck your back toes so that you make your back leg really active. It's a little different than our everyday pigeon. And you're gonna tent your arms, your fingertips again. So your fingertips are tented on the ground so that this is really active. I'd really like you to ask your front hip to get really engaged. So if you could imagine that maybe you could like lift the knee up, that's the engagement that I want from it. So a little work before we lower down. And with your fingertips really tented and your back foot flexed, can you take an inhale and just send your chest forward, think back bend, and your shoulders release back, so maybe the gaze is slightly up towards the ceiling. And then exhale, you're just gonna find a little rounding just in the upper spine and the gaze comes down. Couple of these. So inhale, open the chest up towards the ceiling. I'm still pressing a lot into the pinky toe line of my front foot. So I'm asking my front hip to be super involved in this as opposed to just melting into it, right? I want it to be really active. Do one more. And exhale. Cool. Release your back leg. So now your toes are untucked. See if you can melt a little deeper into the thigh. And then if it feels okay, you're gonna take your hands to the back of your head. If it doesn't, if you're like, no way, Jose Michelle, then keep your hands tented on the ground. And I want you to see if you can just find a little more spinal extension here. lifting the heart up towards the ceiling. Think of the sternum and the collarbones broadening away, and your head getting really heavy into your hands. Just take one more big breath here. And exhale, slowly start to round the spine. Release your hands. You're riding the spine all the way down to the ground. So now you're coming into probably the pigeon that you're used to, with your chest and your forehead coming down towards the ground. Release your arms forward. See if you can lengthen your back leg a lot and keep your back ankle in alignment with your hip. Take 3 breaths. And if you don't love this version, right, you could absolutely come to lying on your back. You could take a little thread the needle and take the same right hip on top of the left. But hopefully that kind of active variation that we started with prepared your hip so that it took some of this work out of your knee. One more big breath, friends. And then slowly start to walk yourself on out of it. Okay. Tuck your back toes. Take your front pigeon leg and extend it back so you're in kind of like a 3-legged dog. And then just take a moment. If you want to take some circles here, I kind of have my wall in the way, so I don't have a whole lot of space to do that. But anything you need to do to kind of send some more energy and some fluid back into that hip. And then when you're ready, I'm going to meet you kneeling facing me. So you come to kneeling. I'd like you to come into a high kneel position if that's okay on your knees. How are we doing? How are our hips? So high kneel, just so we can get a little bit of openness in the front of our hips, right? You've been doing lots of sitting? Me too. Okay. And then just kind of release your shoulders, let them just hang. And you're still trying to have really tall, really good posture, right? So I'm not using this to kind of like hang out here, but I'm standing really tall. So I'm imagining that my hip flexors, my psoas, like suspenders are reaching up and under my abdominals. My tailbone lengthens down, so I'm really engaged into my legs, and hopefully that should release into your hips even more. Cool. And then I want you to grab for kind of opposite elbows if that's available in your body. Right, you could absolutely just grab for wrists if that doesn't feel good, or opposite elbows. Cool. Standing really tall on your shins. Rotate your head towards your right. Take an inhale. And exhale to center. And then rotate your head towards the left. And back to center. Couple of these. So my hope, because we've been doing this a little bit for the past couple weeks, is that with your arms behind you, you have a little bit more feedback into whether your shoulders or your hips are moving. And you can just let this be a movement controlled by your cervical spine. But also, we'll start to put some stuff together that we've been slowly layering on for the past week or so. Okay, meet me at center. Rotate your head towards the right, and listen to this since you probably can't see me anymore. You're rotated towards the right, nothing else has changed. Can you just tuck your chin in towards your right shoulder? So you flex your neck, your chin comes in towards your right shoulder. And then you're gonna stay rotated towards the right. Can you just lift your chin up towards the ceiling so it's reaching out towards the right side of the ceiling? And then do it again, chin down towards the shoulder. Chin up towards the ceiling. So can I, if we're being anatomical, flex and extend my neck while I rotated it. One last one. I don't know about you, but my right shoulder is like doing really weird things. It really wants to help. Cool. Meet me back through neutral. Turn your head towards center. You want to try the left side? Okay. Rotate towards the left. Start there. Everything else is still trying to point forward towards me. And then your chin just lowers down towards your left shoulder. Wow, this side is really tight for me. And then your chin lifts up towards the ceiling, towards the left side of the room. So you hold on to that same rotation as you just lower your chin towards your shoulder. And lift your chin towards your shoulder. Right, you could totally do this standing if kneeling isn't good for you. You could totally do this seated. But my hope is that this feels nice and open in the front of your hips and you feel super stable on your shins. Last one. Cool, chin comes back to parallel. Bring your chin back to face me. And then unwind your hands. Meet me in a nice tabletop position. And then just shift your hips back to that downward facing dog for a moment. Adjust your legs as necessary. We'll be moving into that kind of lizardy, pigeony situation on the other side. So when you're ready, extend your left leg back. It's really long to start, so your hips are square. They're in the same line. My toes are turned down. Bend into your floating knee, so your left knee, and step it between your hands. Lower your back knee down to the ground. Cool. And then when you get there, walk the left hip out. So the left hip is to the outside of the left arm. And then remember that PNF, that kind of feedback that we were asking for. Your left tricep, your left arm is going to Velcro itself to the inside of your left knee. So you've got a good amount of traction and feedback. That Velcro stays stuck. Your inhale breath straightens the front leg. Maybe the toes come up towards your face and along for the ride. Your exhale breath holds onto that traction as you bend into the knee. Inhale breath. And exhale breath. So the nice thing about kind of these variations is when we do like little things, right? We switch the angle of taking the leg to the outside of the arms, just that little subtle switch of the angle, or maybe that little subtle switch of asking the arm to stay glued to the leg asks for different support from your muscles. So it should ideally, hopefully, feel different. You should feel a little bit more muscle release. I know I do, versus when I do it through parallel. Right? So as long as there's some purpose to it, it's nice to get a little playful. Do one last one. Leg goes straight. Pause. Maybe you can lift those toes up towards your face even more. And then see if you can connect back to that thigh bone and lengthen that thigh bone down towards the hamstring. If it means you lose the connection of the arm, not a big deal. And then connect to that left hip. See if you can send that hip down and away from your waistline and back behind you. Take one more breath. And then bend into your front knee a lot. We're gonna set up for that pigeon variation, and know that if you preferred it on your back, feel free to come into that now. But you're gonna walk your left toes towards your opposite arm, so towards your right arm. You're lowering onto the side of your hip. And then, I think they say ideally your shin is perpendicular to your mat. But I know for me that shape doesn't feel good in my body. But that knee points out towards the side of the room. Your back toes are gonna stay flexed for this first variation, and your fingertips are tented either on the ground or something to elevate the ground towards you. The back leg is just as active. And the tenting hopefully made that front leg active too, right? So if you could even kind of play with it, could you lift your front hip up off the ground? That's way harder for me on this side. Okay, let's move our spines a little bit. Take an inhale breath, open your chest up towards the ceiling, feel the shoulders drape down. And then exhale, think of it as your upper back wraps as you find rounding. Inhale, expand. Exhale, drape and wrap. Think of this space, right, in your collarbones, in the space in between your shoulders. Bring a lot more attention to the knife edge of your front foot. Let it be super active here. Last one here, friends. untuck your back toes. If it felt okay in your body to take your hands to the back of your neck, please do that now. And then find a little heaviness as the weight of the skull melts down into the hands, and then maybe this back bend, this extension of the spine, can move a little farther down the spine. Take 2 more breaths. Hold on to that connection of your front hip, right? We still haven't sunk into it. We're still asking it to turn on. And then start to find rounding in your spine, so much so that your hands come down to the ground, and now you lower your chest and your head. You untuck your back toes if they're not already there. Take a couple breaths. I like to imagine that my front hip, right, my outer hip, was opening out towards the sides of the room. So sometimes I even use my left hand and just kind of gently open my left hip out and away from my pubic bone, away from the seam line of my pants, moving the flesh of my thigh. And then slowly start to walk yourself back to center. All right, friends. From here, tuck your back toes. Take your front toes back. Think that half, or that 3-legged dog, rather. And then do anything that feels good. If those hip circles felt good, maybe do those. Or you just reach that leg back. And then slowly come back onto hands and knees. And you know what? I lied. I changed my mind. You're going to come to seated and come to lying on your back. So I just want to make sure we get in some good stuff before class is over. So come to lying on your backs and find a strap or a tie or something like that if you chose to grab one. And we'll end with a nice leg and strap series, because I think that especially after all that hip opening, this should feel really releasing. And it's my favorite. So come to lying on your backs. You're gonna take your left leg long, so it's active. It's definitely a part of this, but it's not the one that has the strap. Bonus points if you can take that long leg. If you've got a wall nearby, if you can press it into that wall, awesome. Not a big deal if you don't. And then that strap comes onto the sole of the right leg, and I want you to see if you can bring the strap. Let's do this. Let's bring it a little closer to your heel. Let's do that. A little closer to the ball of your foot. Sorry, I'm so indecisive today. A little closer to the ball of your foot than to your heel. Your arms and your shoulders and your head are super relaxed. So if that means that you need to make this situation longer, please do. Your thigh bone is lengthening back towards your hamstring. Your foot is trying to stamp up towards the ceiling so that you're ideally looking for your ankle to float directly over your hip socket so that you have that nice long line through your femur bone. Continue to get really active through your opposite leg. Take your strap into your right hand. Take your left hand onto your left hip for stability and open the strap leg. So open your right leg out towards the right, just to the degree where your opposite hip stays heavy. Right? So using that opposite leg for feedback, pretending that it's reaching towards a wall is really going to help with that. And then start to find a little more external rotation as you turn the leg that has the strap out even more, reaching through your heel and reaching through the pad of your foot. You should feel an immense stretch in that whole inner seam line of your pants. And maybe that leg comes down to the ground, not a big deal if it doesn't. Hopefully that strap provides some feedback for you. And then it's slowly drag that leg back to center. The strap goes into your left hand. Your right arm can kind of do whatever feels best. You're gonna cross that leg over your body so much that you come onto the total side of your left leg and you're on the knife edge of your foot, so kind of like a twist. And then you're gonna reach that leg down towards the ground across your body. And in this line, if you can see me, I'm on the side of my long leg, I'm on the side of my leg and the knife edge of my foot.
My foot that has the strap is reaching down to the ground across my body. And if I flex into my big toe, if I really anchor into my big toe and my heel, I feel this immense gnarly stretch in my piriformis and my glute muscles. A lot. And then maybe you ask that hip to lengthen down and away from your waistline, and that stretch gets really crazy. Take one more breath, or pause it and take a couple more breaths here. And then really slowly and sloth, like, oof, bring yourself back to center. Switch legs. Okay, friends. So, strap goes onto the left foot, closer to the ball than to the heel. And then you are really active through your opposite leg, right? And if you are lucky and you have a wall you can press your foot into, please do so. But if not, you're imagining that you're pressing and stamping that foot into a wall so that this leg and this hip are totally on board. And then your strap leg is working, but it's supported, right? So that's why we're asking for this release in our head, neck, and shoulders. Thigh lengthens back towards the hamstring. I'm looking for my ankle to be in line with my femur bone, and my foot is trying to stamp up towards the ceiling and release out of my hip flexors. Take one more big breath. And then right hand comes onto her right hip, strap leg, left leg reaches out towards the left. Lucky me, I have a little wall to plant it on. But just to the degree where you can maintain, right? Where your opposite hip doesn't try to pop up, that's where you stay. And then you start to send some breath into that foot to keep it super active, and you should feel this really intense stretch through the whole inner seam of your pants. Take one more breath. Stamp into your long leg more. And then bring that leg back to center, switch grip. So now my right hand has the strap, and I'm slowly crossing that strap left leg over my body, so I topple onto the side of my right hip, the side of the knife edge of my right foot, and my left leg crosses over my body. I'm in this twist. And then start to really reach through the big toe and the heel, right? So you're turning on that leg. Top hip lengthens away from the waistline, oh my God, and that whole side of your hip, that whole glute starts to get an immense stretch, right? That's your piriformis. It thrives when you're able to stretch it in these nice, intense opening stretches, but then you're also getting this nice rotation too, which should feel really relieving on your low back. How about one more breath? Or a bunch more if you'd like. And then slowly bring yourself back to center. Cool. Ditch your strap. We're gonna end with a little conscious relaxation. So if you did have a ball, and if it's inflated still, if you wanna place that under your hips, that might feel really nice. Or if you had a block or a book, you can also do that as well, just to elevate your hips and kind of end where we began. And my invitation for you is to take your legs long if that feels okay in your hip flexors and in your sacrum. That's really nice for me right now. And your arms are just gonna come alongside your body, releasing your shoulders from your neck. And for these last few moments of class, might you connect back to that sensation of grounding and rooting. Maybe noticing how your natural breath feels now. After your straw breath, after your slow stretching, how does your breath feel now? Can you give permission to your body to feel at ease, to feel calm and restored? Can you give permission to your nervous system to feel safe and secure and home. Feel free to stay here longer, but if you're ready, you'll bend your knees and release your accessory and find your way slowly into a seated position, and we'll just end with a closing breath. Place your hands together. Press your thumbs in towards your chest, or for me, it's the fabric of my shirt today. And maybe allow your eyelids to close if that feels okay. And for these last few moments, just kind of connect to the sensation of your heartbeat, of that magnificent breath, right? That orchestrates, that moves your body. The magnificence that is being a human being that gets to live in your body, that gets to breathe and move and sleep and jump, and do all the things that we get to do, even if that means we're doing them at home right now. Release your hands. Thanks for relaxing with me. I hope you feel a little bit more at ease, and that your shoulders and your hips feel a little more open. My name is Michelle. Feel free to drop me a comment or a note